Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Future of Space. I'm your host, Daniel Fox. Our guest today is Jim Kitchen. He's a University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill business professor and entrepreneur. Jim was a crew member on Blue Origin's space flight of March 31st, and he is a world explorer. Jim, welcome to the Future of Space.
Thanks for having me, and hello, everyone.
Jim, you just went to space. You have a long history of looking up to the stars. But before we get into that, could you share with us three words that capture the essence of space for you?
I think the first one would be humbling. Um, looking, there's been billions of people that have looked up from Earth to space, and to actually be able to go and do that was so humbling, especially as a professor, as a teacher, a lifelong explorer. So word number one would be humbling. Word number two would be void, um, void of oxygen, void of a lot of resources, void of humanity, which makes the Earth that much more spectacular. Um, and my third word would be critical. Um, we've got to get off this planet and do much more, because the growth curve of the human growth curve 100, 200, 500 years from now, it's just not sustainable. If we're at 8 billion people now, I don't know that this planet can withstand 16 billion people. So it's critical. Space is critical for all of those things, and some of which I think we'll probably talk about today.
Isn't it what we've been doing, really, the human species, ever since we started as a tribe first, but to always go beyond these places where we started. We are born with a certain circumstances and geographical location, but then at one point we outgrow those places, and I think that's how nature works. Like every species like outgrows its environment. Like we can think of even just a pack of wolves. At one point, one alpha couple is going to have to find new pasture because now it's too many people in one place. It's just that now I think it's harder for people to understand this principle because we've reached at the planetary scale. Now we have to really kind of push the boundary
You're
to go and establish ourselves into space. But that's one thing that we've been doing ever since the beginning. Would you agree?
you're so right. I let me change the tenor of this conversation. I blame my putting, my bad putting, my three putts when I golf, on the concept that the Earth was flat, and we were afraid that it was. So I never hit the ball past the hole. I have this fear of going beyond, and I think that humanity lived like that for a while, and then we're like, oh well, maybe it's not flat. Let's go explore, and we've just been exploring and exploring. I just think it's part of who we are, to explore and see beyond and what more is there. It fills, personally, it fills. People always ask me, why do you travel like you do? Space, are you kidding me? And for me, it fills my soul. It's who I am. It helps me understand more of me. And I think, my ancestors and yours and many of those viewers watching, have for generations wanted to know more and more. It's a quest for knowledge, because it gives us context of who we are today.
Now you came out to Blue Origin with the flag 194, and understand that that's your 194th country or destination. So obviously
Boundary,
you've been traveling.
boundary there.
They're all in the back. You've been traveling
Yeah.
for a very long time. Was that curiosity of new experiences always with you, even when you were a teenager, or was there a specific moment when you really started to travel?
Oh no. No, it came. So my mom and dad were public school teachers, and they were. I grew up in South Florida, and we didn't have a lot, but we had. My parents said the three best things about teaching were June, July, and August, and we had a wood paneled station wagon, and they'd put the kids in the back, and I had the way back. I had the rear facing seat out that wagon. My parents were, we didn't have enough money to have the air conditioner on, so I'm looking this way. Mom and dad are driving there, and my sisters are in the middle seat. They occupied, and I was in the way back where the luggage was underneath me. And so I saw the continental United States facing backwards, and with the windshield down and the exhaust coming in. So that explains some of my, travel neuroses of wanting to see the world and doing crazy fun things. But I saw the United States, continental U.S. backwards. All of the 48 states. So I had a unique perspective from the very beginning, and I definitely inherited that wanderlust from my parents, and it continued. I went to college and started to know and surprise a travel business, and began traveling and doing some other selling space travel and doing some other fun things. And so yes, I grew up. I was an American Field Service exchange student in my junior year. That was my first big international trip. Living in Valparaiso, Chile, kind of a port industrial town in Chile. And it was a fantastic experience. So I had this sort of formative experiences of travel and exploring and wanting to see more, because it just was who I am. It was every part of me, and I just took that into my adulthood.
So, two questions from that. One, do you think that the it's something that we're losing today with our children? Because when we do travel, I mean, I remember also traveling with my parents and looking at the landscapes, passing by and looking at the difference of houses and horizons and different structures. But now you look at the way that people travel in their cars, and either they're on an iPad or they're looking at the computer that's in the back, in the back seat. So they're kind of almost disconnected with the landscape in which they travel. So one question is, do you think that we're losing that? And the other question is, how important is traveling in shaping the character and developing empathy and perspective and these crucial skills in understanding the world that we live in?
So yes, but I'm a glass three quarters full person. So as a lifelong entrepreneur, I have said yes, and let me see the best. So yes, but hey, even if your kid has an iPad, and get them the right apps, so that uh, maybe when you're traveling, it's hard to travel having kids and having taken kids all around the world with me, and to keep kids, children engaged. So take the iPad, but then take it away from them and be like, "Hey, look out the window. Check that out. Check that out." Much of the world is rural, right? When you drive through, and it's like the same cow and the same field, and then but like, okay, you can do both. I'm finding a way to in this conversation to say yes, but take your kids as much as you can, because and to the second question, it makes your world bigger. It helps you. It will help them figure themselves out, even subtly, as their children, and to know their place in the world, and to travel meaningfully. If you can, be thoughtful of where you go, and what you do and what you experience, even in, the Cayman Islands or really glitzy uh, resort locations, you can do some really meaningful things, which will teach life lessons to kids that they can absorb, and become better citizens, global citizens. To your second point, so many things to learn, while traveling. I have just finished a book about that. I'm searching for the right publisher right now to go through those things. It's been a 30 plus year journey for me. You're so right about those lessons. It has helped me as a man to just evolve from a young man. One of my first trips, after going to Chile, was going to Nicaragua, and seeing a um, living in a just this small rural village in a grass hut with a thatched roof, maybe 60, 70 square feet. None of the children had shoes, in the entire neighborhood. Uh, and I stayed in the one hammock, no indoor plumbing, outdoor plumbing, just nothing. It was a very poor village. And I thought, I left that thinking, wow, I'm so fortunate. 30 years later, I saw the same scene in Tanzania. And instead of feeling sort of pity and how fortunate I was, I actually felt a little bit of envy because I saw these thatch huts. I saw the moms and dads interacting with their children. I saw the kids with the wheel that you see them running. Every rural village seems to have kids running through it with a wheel. And they had it all. They had food, clothing, shelter, community, laughter. Maybe they didn't have world class health care or child care or whatever, but they had it all. So instead of feeling pity, I felt a bit of envy. Of it was a beautiful, simple life. So that evolution, it's such a great evolution. And there's a zillion other things that you can learn from travel. And the term that I use is travel makes your world bigger. We talk a lot about the internet and life and transportation and Lear jets and supersonic vehicles and space planes, and we can go from point A to point B in an hour. That makes your world really small, but travel makes your world bigger.
I absolutely agree. I mean, just back in that time that we went to the moon, one of the biggest lessons that came out of that is that we went to the moon to learn about the moon, but we ended up actually learning, looking back at the Earth and learning more about ourselves. And traveling does that. You go first to seek these new places, these new experiences, but what you end up doing is learning how what you have back home, grateful for those things, but learning about you and learning about these different perspectives and how people are connected to their environment, their place. I mean, I remember back in 2019 when I did my book tour, we wanted to do it on a road trip, so we crossed the North America twice, and you're driving and you see all those different landscapes and you start to understand the culture, the difference of culture in people, how obviously Los Angeles or New York where everything is so in your face, and then you get into the middle of the country and you drive for miles and miles and you just get little cabins there and there, and you understand that when people even just want to go and do the groceries, they have to travel for like half an hour, and that shapes the character. So traveling really kind of opens you up to all these different experiences and makes you understand this complexity of language, of communication and character, and it kind of, like you'd say, it opens up and broaden your understanding of the world.
Yeah, I learned. I love that story that you just told. So beautifully, so beautifully told. Because it's so heartfelt. Of you had time to see that and to do it, and saw drove back and forth. And I think so many of us were in a rush to see the world. There's been people that have traveled the world in like a year. I heard of one person saw 30 countries in Europe in a day. And the thing that you miss with that, and that's not, I saw all 193 UN recognized countries, but it took me 30 years, and I had my children and my wife in tow. So I didn't do it as a 23-year-old, single person just like racing through. I wanted to experience it because I do think, and that's not to say that if you set a Guinness book for traveling the record for traveling the world, good for you. At least you tried and saw it. So hats off to you on that. But for me, travel was something deeply personal. In fact, when I went to Syria in 2019, just before COVID hit, That was my 193rd country, and I was sad. Like I was sad um, because that traveling that UN recognized country list was just a way for me to see the world. It was a sort of a conduit. After I got into 95 countries or so, I was like, how many countries are there? I think I asked Jeeves. Google wasn't around at the time. It's like, Jeeves, how many countries are there? Oh, there's 193. That was so long ago. People that are watching this that are under 20 are like, what? What's he talking about? But it was a really bad web browser. And so you would ask a question, and Jeeves he was the butler, and he would retrieve your answer for you and give it to you. So um, I just made a list of the places that I had been to and the places that I hadn't, and I just started this journey. I never intended to set out and see the world, but what I learned was so many of those life lessons, like you just articulated, and it just changed me as a person. And that's the essence of this book. You referenced yours, and mine was putting those life lessons together because I'm a teacher. Another thing that I inherited from my parents. I've been a lifelong entrepreneur, but started teaching at Keenan Flagler Business School at UNC in 2010. And so my goal was to teach students life lessons as told through the context of travel and then now space. And some of those important lessons were connecting with others, finding common ground, like that. So that would be one bucket. Like learn how to young person, old person, old dog, learn this new trick of learning to find common ground with people because we live in a very divisive world, and if you seek conflict, you will find it. But if you seek to find common ground, that's an invaluable lesson. And so when you're in Africa and you very quickly, want to connect with somebody in the marketplace because you want to learn what is a bajia. I'm in Mozambique and I want to speak to Margarita, who's making these things, and all the kids are in line for it. What is that she's making? And you have to bother Margarita and say, "Hey, would you show me what you're doing?" She's going to look at you. She's going to size you up very quickly. If it's in your heart to connect, to have common ground, if you have a smile on your face, she's going to go, "Okay, I'll show you what I'm doing." Stranger, Mzungu, uh, white stranger, um, and so you gotta learn that you're, and the second part of that is your place in the world. Like I'm no better than Margarita. We're all uniquely human. I love what she's doing. I embrace what she's doing. I'm genuinely interested in what she's doing. And so I'm looking this way because I'm imagining Margarita to be there. And so I want to understand what these bajias are. And they're basically fried dough. And why that's important, why margarita is important, is because there's a long line of children there, and that's the only thing that they will eat. Much of that country lives on less than $1 a day until dinner, if they get dinner. So she's providing this low context, or low cost, high carbohydrate diet for these kids not to go hungry. So I want to learn all about that. So by connecting with people and knowing your place in the world, that you're a small part in this very large and complex and complicated world. And I think the other, the last thing, life lesson is, so you're in Mozambique or India or other places, and you're like, wow, I was in Iraq at an IDP camp and displaced person camp, 100,000 people there, and my guide said, "Hey, do you want to buy a turkey or turkey dinner for 10 people?" And I looked around. I'm like, "What? Like what 10, right?" And wanting to solve that problem, but instead taking that context, like taking that urge to serve back into my hometown of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and using that context, that servant heart in my own home, first of all. So being the kind of husband and father that I need to be, an alert, engaged husband, an alert and engaged father. So my goal was to, when my kids said, "Hey, Dad, play Monopoly," or "Hey, Dad, jump in the pool." Hello, dads watching. Yeah, say yes, not like, "Hey, later," right? So taking that mindset and then doing stuff in your own community, giving to your own community. So if you travel and you don't see these things and pick them up and it doesn't change your world, then you've traveled just for naught. Um, you know, for the sake of traveling. For me, I wanted to not be a passport collector, but I wanted to, like a stamp collector. But I wanted to be a connector. That was my goal, not to collect countries. Instagram, me, selfie, look at me. Morocco, hey, Morocco. No, I wanted to find the heart of Morocco. And so that's how I did it in marketplaces with those three lessons always at the forefront.
So I did. I mean, I still do a little bit, but I've done solo wilderness expeditions for 12, 13 years, and part of my process of going to these remote places was first to connect with the people, because I've always found that it would be arrogant of me to come in and think that I can capture the spirit of this place by bringing with me the my expectations. And what I would do is first of all sit at the table sharing a meal with people who live there, and then hearing their stories and ending discovering the place through their eyes, through their stories. And then the other thing that it would do is that you start to realize that independently of how we go from there, we all start from the same place. We all start, everybody around the world, we all try to provide for our children. We all try to be recognized. We
Yeah.
want to find value. We want to have a meaning in life, and we want to be loved. And then after that, it gets a little bit complicated, but we all start from the same place. And when you sit at the table and you share food, that is really where the magic happens. You're talking about, there are two things that was going through my mind when you're talking about traveling. So in Europe, the gap year is seen as an asset when you go travel. Like often employers will ask you, why is it that you did not travel? Because they see travel as a really strong asset in business, because now you understand the world in a different way. In the US, we often see it's like, why waste a year of travel when you can, really put it into an internship or go straight to the business? But I wish people saw the value in traveling. And then I remember this. It was back in the days of iPhone, BlackBerry, and there was this travel magazine who had done a little competition, a little test. They sent three people out with a series of tasks to do traveling. One had an iPhone, one had a BlackBerry, and then the other one had no iPhone and no BlackBerry. And the person who ended up winning was the person with no iPhone, no BlackBerry. But not only did he win, but he also discovered even more, because not having the iPhone or the BlackBerry forced him to ask around and to really to interact with the people. And then the people would be like, you're asking about this, but there's something else, or you should come to see us, all that, and just increasing and enhancing the experience. And while I mean, listen, I love my technology, and I love my iPhone and all the benefits that it gives us, but also learning to kind of put it aside and connect and interact with the people, because they're just a gateway to so much experiences and this human story that bonds us all. Like you visited 190, well, 94 boundaries now. Like it's the stories that you have are absolutely amazing. Like your children must be so grateful for all the experiences that you brought to them.
Yeah, no, I love hearing that. And yeah, it's I love what you said about. I have a freshman at first year student at UNC, and she's stressing a little bit about what she's going to do in the summer. And should I get an internship? Should I come home? And it just reminds me that travel. There's no substitute for travel. What we're very seriously considering is to have her maybe find a friend or two and just backpack through Europe. We seem to have lost that. That was a big thing when I was a student. What did you do during the summer? Oh, I took Eurail through Europe. That was the best. Like exploring the world and seeing that. You're right. we're on the all of those little Habitrail wheels, and um, to be able to get off and see the planet. One of the best stories that I teach my students early in the semester. So I teach in a big auditorium, and I might have 120 students, and I say, "How many of you want to be wealthy?" And all of the hands go up, and then we start talking, breaking down what it is that they want to do with that. And I have some class projects that teach about profit, creating crazy profits, and then having a purpose to that. So profit with a purpose. About going back to this wealthy conversation, a lot of times people don't know why they want to be wealthy. Like why do you want a lot of money? And it goes to those values and those sort of life lessons. And if you don't have there are countless stories that are told, the biblical stories from, thousands of years ago to, King Solomon, known as the wisest man on the planet, had it all, but wasn't, couldn't find happiness. And it wasn't just money and power and, wine, song, all of that, fame, all of that. There was more to it than that. So what is it that you're going to do with your wealth? I think being able to find that and the answers to those sort of philosophical questions are best found through travel. So I'm hoping that my daughter will go and explore and learn some of those lessons on her own, because as a dad, there's only so much you can teach your children. But that's a very important lesson that I taught my students, as told through the context of in Petra, Jordan, these amazing ruins. And I'm sitting on the king's, uh, the floor where the king used to live, and no one even knows his name. 3,000 years ago, is the most powerful man on the planet, but no one even knows his name anymore. So be careful about wanting wealth for the sake of just wealth. So many lessons like that.
Absolutely. So I was reading did a little bit of research in the newspapers, and then in one article, it stated that when you married your wife, there was an agreement that if there was an opportunity to go to space, like she would have to accept and allow you to go to space. So you've been dreaming of this day or this time for a long time, even before like a time where like we were not even close. How far back space goes for you?
Yeah. So let me take you back from launch to the beginning just quickly. When I was a kid, I saw an Apollo launch. Um, it was the Apollo 11 launch off the coast of Florida. My parents, as I mentioned, we were travelers. We would go from Florida to Washington State in that wood paneled station wagon, and we stopped off and watched that launch in Cape Canaveral, and it just shook the earth, and it literally lit up the sky. And I was like, I want to be an astronaut. So my fourth grade teacher was Mrs. Glen, familiar name. And so the word, the rumor around the school was that was Mrs. Glen's sister, John Glen's sister. So we always, we were close to the space program, and went to college, started that travel business. But the first part of that travel business was a marketing company. And I used to promote back, this is 1985, this thing called Project Space Voyage. There's a brilliant entrepreneur back in, I'll get it closer so people can see it. Um, there was this brilliant entrepreneur named T.C. Schwartz. This is 1985. He was promoting these low Earth orbit space trips, a lot like that Inspiration 4 launch, and it would go around the Earth, and then you come back. And I was like, I just want to promote, like I just wanted to sell enough. The goal was to sell enough of those to be able to go myself one day. Challenger happened a year later, and so the whole notion of human space travel outside of NASA was a no-go. Fast forward, so that was 1985, 1986, and then 10 years later, I got engaged, and we were planning our wedding in 1997. I said to my wife, "Hey, if I ever get a chance to go to space, I just want to let you know ahead of time. I want to be able to do that." And she was like, "It was not a written thing, but she's like, whatever, as if that's ever going to happen. And so 25 years, later, after traveling the world, I got a call from Blue Origin and said, "Hey, do you want to go?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then we were all at that launch, and there were people, my friends were ridiculed me mercilessly, asking me, Jim, how many trips did you sell? Ha ha ha, yeah, and my wife was like, "Yeah, like that's ever going to happen." And so 25 years later, there we are at this launch, and it's actually happening. And it was surreal that it actually, came this dream came true. Wanted to be an astronaut as a kid, sitting in my mom's lap watching that launch take off. Paying homage to that little boy that was dreaming of that 50 years ago, and to those professional astronauts that actually made this whole space program viable. To that kid that still believed, and when he was in college, that he was going to sell space travel and one day go to space, and then to that person that kept the dream alive by asking his wife, then girlfriend slash fiance, like, hey, can I go? Keeping that dream alive, and then 25 years after that, so 50 years in total, hoping that it would one day come true, and then that happened, just recently.
You went up and you describe the the blackness that you experience as eternal black, and I'm reminded of the three words that you expressed at the beginning. One of them is void. Now, in all my years of coaching and telling about going and experiencing nature, there's a physicality to life that it's really hard to share unless you experience it. Like being under the night sky essentially with stars. I mean, you can be in the planetarium with the best star show, but it will never replace that physical experience. Now, you went up, and I guess like it's hard for you to express what that black is, other than saying, it's a void, it's eternal black. But can you try to express that physical experience that you had when you went up and you see? I mean, William Shatner, had the death and life and blue and black. But for you, like, how physical was it?
So let me answer that in multiple parts. So I'll take you through this, and it's only been a few weeks, so it's still very, believe it or not, I mean, it's still very emotional, like, um, because it was physical. It was. So I've done two zero gravity flights, and I did centrifugal force training at NASTAR, and I was not prepared for. I just was like, oh, I'm an ultra marathon runner. Like, my physical tolerance, I've got this. Like, I'm in good shape. Done all those other things that I just mentioned. Like, I'm good. Like, I am really good. Like, I'm at the top level of people that are ready for this launch, emotionally and physically, and I wasn't. Um, and and so physically, it was way more intense than I thought. Not like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I wasn't afraid of dying or sitting on top of a hydrogen bomb. It was just like, wow, the G forces. You can go play the Masters in a simulated golf game, but it doesn't recreate. It doesn't mean that if you're teeing off in front of 50,000 people that that simulation counts for anything. These are real G forces, and so I'm in seat three. This thing takes off. My heart is pumping, and we're laying essentially flat. And so there's supposed to be straight GX, which is G forces directly on you. And it takes off. And after the first, 800 miles an hour, it's like being in an electric car and just going 0 to 100. And your face is like, wow, that's fast. And then 200, yeah, like 100 to 200, 200 to 400, 400 to 800. It's like, wow, those linear G's just like that. I think I got a little GZ too, because which is up and down G's, because not only did we spun, but then the we tilted a little bit too. So I kind of had this feeling like I'm going up this way underneath, kind of like looking this way, um, and so it was physically intense. We got to 1,200 miles an hour, and I remember looking up. And I just saw it on the video we got Friday of the full launch. And I was like, somebody said, "Wow, I could really feel the G's," and I touched my face because I was like, "Is my face still there? Like, are my cheeks still attached?" It was a lot. So you can do 3 Gs in a simulator, and it's like no big deal. But 3 Gs really going, 1,200, 1,500, up to 2,300 miles an hour is a lot. So then you go through the atmosphere and then it thins out, and it's like, I do it best with the sound. It's like, like there is zero friction, and you can feel the zero friction going up, and you can see the MPH just going faster, 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 and you're just flying. So you hit 2,300 miles an hour, and then they call MECO, main engine cutoff. The capsule separates, and then you're up. You look out this window. So here's my window. It's probably a 4-foot window, and I I see. So there's 6 windows across. We After Miko, you can kind of cheat and get your no separations coming. You're hoping separations coming, um, and then you unbuckle your seatbelt, and you have roughly 3 to 4 minutes. And I remember we got up. We were planning to take a picture. So you get up, and I remember just being dumbfounded across. So here's my window across. There was this window, and you could see the blackness, and I was captivated. Yes, you could see the earth below, but I was captivated by that darkness. To your question, and then I took the picture, and came back and looked at it. I was like, "There's the earth, but look at that! It's literally." And I said out loud, "Look at the black. That is the blackest black I have ever seen, and will ever see." Because I chose the word void because it is, um, in context to that, the curved earth below, which was blue, and then you can see the little wisp of the atmosphere. That that context, the two of them sort of side by side, made the black even that much, you know, that much more or that much less, like, of a color. So the contrast between the two was so extraordinary. Um, and seeing that whole thing was like, I had no context. Like if I said to somebody, "Hey, there's a giraffe," they're like, "Oh, um, I've never seen a giraffe." Yeah, well, it's kind of like a dog with a long neck with a bigger snout. You can kind of take an analog and go, "Oh yeah, I see that." I had no analog for seeing. I've seen space movies and stuff like that, but my brain has physically, like, never seen anything that resembles like that version of a giraffe. And then to see it from upside down was even more, mind boggling, mind numbing. So yeah, I think eternal is just, it's infinite, right? It's there could be no other, than, that a void of something creates an infinite of something else, and that's what that was, and I think that's why I use those words.
I was talking to Sian Proctor, and she was telling about the Earth, like how what she didn't expect was the brightness and the warmth of the light coming from the Earth, and obviously the context of seeing the planet. And this is what Frank White, did with his book, The Overview Effect, coined that language, and where people could express the cognitive shift that they were experiencing, because there was no word, no language to try to formulate what people were going through. I mean, it's like having this door opening and just seeing this planet that you came from, all our stories, all our history, the all our conflict, our solutions all come from this little place, and now you're stepping away from it and you're seeing it in context of this vastness of this void, really kind of like the physicality of it. And you're still, and I was talking to Britt, who from Blue Origin, um, and we're talking about the necessity to support the people who go to space, so that when they come down, they have a way to structure all these emotions that they've experienced, because it's overwhelming and you're still processing all this emotion, correct?
Oh yeah, it's there's never a day. I will find I will say that. So I mentioned physically that it was physically demanding. That shouldn't put people off, right? Because William Shatner was 90, he did it. I'm just speaking to my own. Like I was overly brazen, like oh I got this, but not to minimize because I think if had I been a little bit more respectful of what 2,300 miles an hour felt like, I would have been better at that. But emotionally, I Googled like what are the steps of space travel? Like are there emotional steps of space travel? And I came up with the 7 steps of space travel. I won't bore those with you now, but those are all experiences that I'm sure Sion and other people have experienced. Ranging from excitement to denial to I was in a very reflective state, saying "I love you" to everyone just prior to going, and ending with gratitude and of the overview of certainly a big part of that overview effect. Um, so it was, yeah. I think you've got to get physically ready, but also emotionally ready for that. And yeah, I'm still glowing, and I don't think it's ever going to leave me. I really don't. I don't think I'm ever going to get over it. And I feel the first 250 people that were like, "Hey, tell us about it. How was it?" Everyone asked the same thing. How was it? And after the first 250 people, I was like, "Gosh, I'm saying that kind of the same thing. I'm kind of tired of doing that." And then like an hour later, I was like, "You just got to go to space. No one has ever been to space. There's been 108 billion people, and 600 have been to space. Hey, man, um, th- how humbling was that, right?" Um, and so now I feel like it's my responsibility, everyone that asks, to paint the picture, to describe what I just explained to you. It doesn't need to be 20 minutes, but it can be 2 minutes of painting the picture because I'm just one of those people that now somebody knows. Just a normal guy like me got to go to space, and they want to know how it was. So I feel that I feel it's incumbent on me to be able to share that. That's why I love teaching, because I can do it on a much broader and deeper basis. But I feel like it's my responsibility to share calmly and but also emotionally about how amazing it was.
So I guess UNC now has the first bragging right of having a teacher that went to space, and your classes. I hope they appreciate the how grateful they are to have now a teacher who went up to space, and who
I
is
am not the
even an
first.
even better teacher because of going to space.
Let me stop. UNC was where all of the UNC has a long history of space, so I'm not the first. There are so many people that are way more important in the space uh, in space history than me, like James Webb, like the Webb telescope. He was, he was an alum. I'm sure the Hagels are going to brag on Purdue and all of their distinguished alum, but UNC actually hosted all of the Apollo astronauts and then more to learn from to learn about all of the constellations when they actually went to space. So all of them have been here at Moorhead Planetarium to learn how to cite the constellations in case everything went terribly wrong, that they could get back into successfully reentry based on their location from studying where the constellations were outside the window. So we have a long storied history, and I'm like this very small part of it. But yeah, go heels on that one.
Well, you're definitely among a great team. Um, Jim, before we go, I know your book is not out yet, but is going to come out soon. When it does, where can they learn, or can they subscribe to a newsletter, or do you have a website so that they can be let known that your book is going to come out?
My best thing is to follow me on Instagram at Jim.kitchen. Jim and then dot a period, Jim dot Kitchen, Kitchen. And I am always telling a story of somewhere I've gone, or somewhere I'm going, and I'll definitely be promoting the book through there, and giving some presentations. So if people are interested, they can reach out to me at jim@jimkitchen.org, jim@jimkitchen.org, and happy to speak to groups, doing some keynote speeches and things like that right now about lessons learned while traveling and going to space, pushing through barriers and boundaries, and building high functioning teams, and all of those lessons that I teach in my course at UNC, but to a slightly different audience, to more of an adult audience, um, but in a fun and engaging way that are the stories that people need to hear to just live better and deeper lives and more meaningful lives, whether it be you know t- tied together through the context of entrepreneurship, for a business conference, or for anyone that just wants to get um, in this book, I sort of wrap it up at the end. I won't tell the secrets, but for me, it's the context of kind of the secret of what life is, and what's important, and those things, and trying to embody those things, and we're all capable of that. So, um, thanks for having me. I love what you're doing, and thanks for having me be a part of it.
Well, Jim, I'm looking forward to swap books. I'll send you mine, you send me yours, and hopefully you'll have the opportunity to do the 195th country when the moon opens up, and you can find your way over there. Jim, it was a pleasure. We'll put
Uh,
all the links in the description for you, for people to reach out to you and to connect with you and to follow you. But thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, I appreciate you.